By early 1943, Adolf Hitler knew it was coming. Somewhere along the 5,000 kilometers of coastline stretching from Norway to Spain, the Allies were going to land. An invasion was inevitable. The question wasn't if, but when and where. To stop them, Germany had poured immense resources into a defensive line known as the Atlantic Wall. On paper, it was a formidable barrier of concrete, steel, and firepower. A fortress meant to repel any amphibious assault. But reality was a different story. When the legendary Field Marshal Erwin Rommel was tasked with inspecting the defences, he was horrified. The Atlantic Wall was a myth. It was a patchwork of isolated strongpoints, many unfinished, undermanned, and poorly equipped. Instead of an impenetrable fortress, he found a hollow shell, a propaganda piece with gaping holes. Germany was stretched thin, fighting a brutal war on the Eastern Front that consumed the vast majority of its men and materials. There simply wasn't enough to go around. Compounding this weakness was Hitler's own paranoia and strategic blindness. Convinced the Allies might invade Norway to secure Swedish iron ore, he kept 12 battle-hardened divisions stationed there, completely inactive. They were thousands of kilometers away from where the real threat lay, a massive strategic blunder. Furthermore, Hitler was obsessed with one specific location, the Pas de Calais. It was the shortest distance across the English Channel, just 33 kilometers. To him, it was the only logical place for the main invasion. This fixation became the central pillar of German defensive strategy, a fatal assumption that the Allies would exploit with ruthless ingenuity. While Germany was guessing, British intelligence was playing a completely different game, in an astonishing feat of counter-espionage. MI5 had achieved something unprecedented. They had captured or turned every single German agent operating in Britain. This network, known as the double-cross system, meant that the British weren't just stopping German spies, they were controlling them. They could now feed a steady stream of carefully crafted, misleading information directly to German high command. The stage was set for a deception so audacious, so grand in its scale, that it would become one of the greatest strategic illusions in the history of warfare. The code name was Operation Fortitude. Its goal was simple, but monumental: to convince the Germans that the main Allied invasion would strike the Pas de Calais and that the landings in Normandy were merely a diversion. The architect of this grand deception was Lieutenant Colonel David Menschweis, a brilliant, eccentric, and uncompromising officer. He was the perfect man for an impossible job. Strangeways understood that to fool the Germans, he couldn't just tell them a lie. He had to show them one. He needed to create an entire army out of thin air. And so, the first US Army Group, or FUSAG, was born. It was a phantom army, a complete fabrication, but on paper it was the most powerful force the Allies had. It boasted more divisions, more tanks, and more landing craft than the actual invasion force gathering for Normandy, and to command this ghost army, The Allies chose the one general the Germans respected and feared above all others, George S. Patton. After a slapping incident had sidelined him, Patton was without a command, making him the perfect, plausible leader for a fictional force. His very presence in the southeast of England would be a giant, blinking sign pointing directly at Calais. With the framework in place, Strangeways and his team began the magical work of giving FUSAG physical form. They enlisted the help of film studios, stage magicians, and artists to build a believable mirage across the fields of East Anglia. Just opposite the Pas de Calais, a phantom army began to rise. Inflatable rubber tanks, easily lifted by a few men, were arranged in massive armoured formations. Plywood landing craft floated in harbours, creating the illusion of a vast naval armada. Fake supply depots were built, complete with dummy fuel drums and ammunition crates. They even constructed lifelike army camps with laundry lines, fake trenches, and simulated vehicle tracks crisscrossing the countryside to be seen by German reconnaissance planes. But visual deception was only half the battle. To truly sell the lie, FUSAG needed to have a voice. This led to the creation of a massive, coordinated fake radio network, codenamed Quicks. This network generated thousands of bogus radio messages every day. Specially trained operators mimicked the unique fist or style of different radio telegraphers, creating the illusion of bustling command posts, divisional headquarters, and units on the move. They broadcast everything from routine logistics reports to coded operational orders, all carefully scripted to build a picture of a massive army preparing to strike. This constant stream of radio traffic was a siren song for German intelligence, who listened intently, meticulously piecing together the false narrative the Allies were feeding them. The deception extended to every level. Double agents, controlled by MI5, sent a torrent of reports back to Germany confirming FUSAG's existence and strength. They detailed patterns, inspections, the build-up of troops, and the stockpiling of supplies. Each report was a carefully placed piece in the puzzle, reinforcing the German belief that Calais was the target. The Allies even used diplomatic channels, leaking false information to neutral diplomats who they knew would pass it on to the Germans. No detail was too small. They printed shoulder patches for the non-existent divisions of FUSAG and allowed them to be seen. They even created fake wedding announcements in local papers for soldiers in these phantom units. As D-Day approached on June 6, 1944, the illusion held firm. When the first reports of landings in Normandy reached German high command, they reacted exactly as the Allies had hoped. They saw it as a feint, a diversion designed to draw their reserves away from the Pas de Calais, where they believed Patton's real army was poised to strike. Hitler himself refused to release the powerful panzer divisions held in reserve near Calais. He was certain the main blow was yet to come. For crucial weeks after the Normandy landings, the German 15th Army, a powerful force of nearly 200,000 men, sat idle, waiting for an invasion that would never happen. Operation Fortitude was an overwhelming success. The Ghost Army, created by Strange Ways, had held a real army in place, preventing reinforcements from reaching Normandy at the most critical moment. This gave the Allies the precious time they needed to establish a secure beachhead and begin the push inland. But by the time the Germans realized they had been duped, it was too late. The foothold was secure, and the fate of the war in the West was sealed. It was a masterpiece of misdirection, a war won not just with bullets and bombs, but with inflatable tanks, radio waves, and the power of a brilliantly executed lie. This incredible story reminds us that in war, the greatest weapon can often be the mind. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this piece of hidden history, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories just like this one. See you next time. What if I told you that one of the most critical victories of World War II was won not by soldiers on the battlefield, but by an army that didn't even exist? This is the unbelievable true story of Operation Fortitude, the greatest deception in military history. A masterclass in psychological warfare that saved countless lives and secured the success of D-Day. The year is 1944. The Allies are preparing for the largest amphibious invasion ever attempted, the liberation of Nazi-occupied France. But they faced a monumental problem. The Germans knew an invasion was coming. They just didn't know where or when. The entire French coastline was a fortress, the Atlantic Wall, bristling with guns, mines, and millions of soldiers. A direct assault on a prepared enemy would be a bloodbath. To succeed, the Allies had to make the Germans look the wrong way. They needed to convince them that the main attack would happen at the Pas-de-Calais, the narrowest point of the English Channel, while the real invasion force secretly targeted the beaches of Normandy. This is where the Phantom Army comes in. Under the code name Operation Fortitude, British intelligence, led by the brilliant minds of the London Controlling Section, began to build a ghost force. They created the fictional 1st US Army Group, or FUSAG, and who better to command this ghost army than the one general the Germans feared most? General George S. Patton. Patton was a military genius, aggressive and unpredictable, exactly the kind of commander you'd expect to lead the main invasion. The Germans were obsessed with him, so the Allies put him in charge of an army of phantoms. In the fields of Kent and southeast England, directly across from Calais, a strange new army began to appear. Except it was all fake. From the air, German reconnaissance planes saw neat rows of tanks, vast camps of trucks, and entire airfields bustling with activity. But on the ground, these were nothing more than inflatable rubber decoys. Sherman tanks made of canvas and air, wooden aircraft, and dummy landing craft bobbed in the harbours, special units. Even drove around in circles, creating fake tank tracks in the dirt for German spy planes to photograph. They set up empty tents and buildings, complete with fake laundry lines, to simulate the daily life of hundreds of thousands of soldiers. But visuals alone weren't enough. The deception had to be total. The Allies launched a massive campaign of fake radio traffic. Thousands of expertly forged military messages were broadcast, designed to be intercepted by German signals units. These messages discussed troop movements, supply orders, and battle plans, all for FUSAG's fictional invasion of Calais. Radio operators simulated the distinct communication patterns of different military units, creating a symphony of deception that painted a rich, detailed picture of a massive army preparing to strike. To German intelligence, listening in, the radio chatter was undeniable proof. An army was massing in southeast England. This is where the story gets even more incredible. The capstone of the entire operation was the double-cross system, a network of captured German spies who had been turned into double agents, now secretly working for the British. The most famous and effective of these was a Spanish chicken farmer turned master spy named Juan Pujol Garcia. The British codenamed him Garbo because he was the greatest actor in the world. The Germans, who trusted him completely, knew him as Arabelle. Garbo was a genius of deception. From a small office in London, he created a sprawling, entirely fictional network of 27 sub-agents across Britain. He gave them all backstories, personalities, and even personal problems. There was a disgruntled Welsh nationalist, a talkative Gibraltarian waiter, and a gossipy Ministry of Information clerk. None of them were real. Garbo wrote all their reports himself, a tireless stream of intelligence flowing directly to Madrid and then on to Berlin. These reports were a masterpiece of misinformation, a blend of verifiable truths, subtle inaccuracies, and outright lies, all designed to reinforce the German belief in the Calais invasion. Garbo's reports were perfectly crafted to confirm everything else the Germans were seeing and hearing. When German aerial photos showed the inflatable tanks in Kent, Garbo's imaginary agents on the ground would send reports detailing the arrival of new armoured divisions. But when German signals intelligence intercepted the fake radio traffic, Garbo's network would corroborate the information, explaining the strategic purpose behind the troop movements. It was total multi-channel authentication. The Germans were being fed the same lie through every single intelligence source they had. They were trapped in an echo chamber created by the Allies. By the spring of 1944, German High Command was completely convinced that they believed Patton's 1st U.S. Army Group, with its 11 divisions, was the main Allied threat poised to strike at Calais. Meanwhile, the real invasion force, hidden away in the ports of Hampshire and Dorset, remained almost completely undetected. The deception was working better than anyone could have possibly imagined. Then came the moment of truth. On June 6, 1944, D-Day, the real invasion began. Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy. Chaos erupted in the German High Command. Was this the real thing? or just a diversion. Field Marshal von Rundstedt, the German commander in the West, believed Normandy was the main attack and wanted to move his elite panzer divisions to crush the beachhead. But in Berlin, Hitler hesitated. He was still under the spell of Operation Fortitude. This is where Garbo played his final, most crucial role. Just hours after the landings began, he sent an urgent message to his German handlers. He insisted that Normandy was a feint, a diversion designed to draw German reserves away from the real target, Calais. He claimed that Patton's much larger army was still waiting to launch the main assault. The message reached Hitler's desk. Convinced by his most trusted spy, Hitler made a fatal decision. He refused to release the powerful 15th Army stationed at the Pas de Calais. This force consisted of 17 divisions, including elite panzer units, nearly 200,000 men who could have turned the tide in Normandy. But they were ordered to stay put, waiting for a phantom invasion that would never come. For 7 critical weeks after D-Day, while the Allies struggled to secure their fragile foothold in France, the German 15th Army sat frozen, staring at the empty shores of Calais. This monumental blunder gave the Allies the precious time they needed. They were able to land over 500,000 men and thousands of tons of supplies, secure their beachhead, and prepare for the breakout that would eventually lead to the liberation of Paris. Even after the Allies had clearly established themselves in Normandy, Garbo continued his charade, explaining that the plan had simply been delayed due to the partial success of the Normandy diversion. The Germans believed him until the very end. Historians now agree that Operation Fortitude was not just a clever trick, it was a decisive factor in the Allied victory. It saved tens of thousands of Allied lives that would have been lost in a direct assault on a fully prepared enemy. It may have prevented the entire invasion from failing catastrophically on the first day. It was a triumph achieved by an imaginary army, a fictional spy network, and thousands of rubber tanks that fooled an entire empire. The story of Operation Fortitude is a powerful reminder that wars are not just won with bullets and bombs, but with wits, creativity, and the power of information. It shows how controlling the narrative and exploiting an enemy's assumptions can achieve victory without even fighting a battle. The legacy of John Strangeways, the mastermind behind the visual deception, and Juan Pujol Garbo, the actor who convinced Hitler, lives on as a testament to one of the most brilliant and successful deceptions in the history of warfare. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible tales from history. See you next time.